Good evening from Lagos, everyone. I am Nifemi Oguntoye, and this is Beyond 100 Days. You can join the conversation right now on X using hashtag Beyond 100 Days. Remember to tag at TVC News On. Well, we're staying with the security situation in the country as President Tinubu meets with the National Security Council at the State House in Abuja. The meeting has in attendance all heads of security and law enforcement agencies in the country. They're resolved to protect the territorial integrity of the country.
Has also said we should convey this, that we will not accept anybody, any individual flying any foreign flag in Nigeria. That is treasonable offense, and it will be viewed and treated as such. So nobody should allow himself to be used by any individual. Also the issue of coups. Nigeria is a sovereign nation. Nigeria is a democratic nation. All security agencies are here to defend democracy and make sure that democracy continues to strive. We will not accept anyone pushing or taking any action, seemingly or for whatever reason, to want to push for any change of government. Democracy is what we stand for. Democracy is what we continue to defend. For those of them flying flags, if you see a lot of them are kids being pushed to do that. We're following up with those ones that are sponsoring them, those that are pushing them, because you know the flags were also made. We identified those areas and we're going to take serious action against that. The president is clear on his instructions on for us not to accept anyone that wants to disrupt the peace and tranquility of Nigeria.
Early on Sunday, President Tinubu in a national broadcast appealed to protesters and the organizers of the nationwide protest to suspend all demonstrations following the violent twist to the protest in some states, with records of death, destruction of property, and looting of businesses. He says he's heard the grievances of the protesters loud and clear, adding that he understands the pain and frustration that drives the protest. The president said he has put in place measures to revamp the economy.
I commiserate with the families and relations of those who have died and the protest. We must stop further bloodshed, violence and destruction. I hereby enjoin protesters and the organizers to suspend any further protest and create room for dialogue, which I have always acceded to at the slightest opportunity. Last month, we increased our oil production to 1.61 million barrels per day, and our gas assets are receiving the attention they deserve. Investors are coming back, and we have already seen 2 foreign direct investments signed, over $500 million since then. We are providing incentives to farmers to increase food production at affordable prices. I have directed that tariffs and other import duties should be removed on rice, wheat, maize, sorghum, and drugs, and other pharmaceutical medical supplies for the next 6 months. On the fiscal side, aggregate government revenue has more than doubled, hitting over 9.1 trillion naira in the first half of 2024, compared to the first half of 2023, due to our efforts at blocking leakages, introducing automation, and mobilizing funds creatively without additional burden on the people.
Joining me now is former President, Nigerian German Business Group in Germany, Joe Femi Dagoro, for more on this development. Mr. Dagoro, thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Mr. President seemed to have answered the call for him to address Nigerians following the nationwide protests, and we hear him acknowledge in that speech that among the protesters are young Nigerians who desire a better and more prosperous Nigeria. Let's begin with what you think about his Sunday morning speech.
Well, first of all, we have to understand the fact that this is a democratic government, and this has been shown. The way Mr. President has handled the entire situation. You know, when he's been preparing for this for a long time, he said at the beginning, and he's not making excuses. And he was once on the street, and he has demonstrated he knew what it is. And, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he made a statement. Though some might not be, you know, satisfied with what he said, but I mean, that's leadership. He allowed it, and he appealed to the people. And we just have to begin to look at it from that maturity aspect of it. It's one thing for us to begin to look at whether all these things Mr. President has reeled out as measures are now in place, or they will be in place. It's a different ball game. And how long will these things come into place? When are they going to come into place? Some are already in place. The implementation, those are the things that we have to sit down and dialogue and begin to say, okay, which one are already in place? Which one will come in place? How long? When are they coming into place? And I think I've said it before, the situation we find ourselves right now is going to be a bit tougher for a while. And we have to understand that, but it's difficult for us to understand because we can't see it coming. Some of us have seen it coming, some of us cannot see it coming. We just believe immediately there is a change in government or change of pattern, everything must change positively and immediately. But in reality, it's not like that. You see, this is a system that in some cases, the pillars of the whole system has collapsed or dilapidated, and in some cases there are no pillars at all. So how are we going to build the country? So, but then if we are building it and the citizens feel we are not, the government is not building it well or it's not rapid enough, then they have the right to protest, the right to, you know, express their mind, which they've done, which some of them are still doing, and there is room for dialogue. And in the process of this, a lot of things will be going on well. And the citizens will have to see that the government is working. And when the government is working and all these projects are online, it will be a good thing for this country.
We're going to talk about dialogue and the mode and manner you think it should take in a few minutes. But Mr. President also addressed the loss of lives that were recorded in states like Borno, Jigawa, Kano, Kaduna, and other states where violence erupted right from the first day of the protest last week. The destruction of properties, according to him, set us back as a nation, and not even at a time where there are scarce resources, you know, to restore them. Would you say that as a nation, collectively, that we have learned significantly from incidences from the NSAS protest, for instance, in 2020 and the recent occurrence in Kenya?
Well, first of all, in cases like this where we have to lose life, it's just unfortunate, and we feel it individually and collectively that we have to lose life or lives. It's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. And some families are growing now, some families are mourning, and our hearts goes out to those families as well. You know, but we have to look at the situation that no matter how careful our security agencies are, there are some situations whereby they might be uncontrollable in the sense that situations like this will have to happen. But when you look at it globally, we see how the youths or the citizens of other countries have taken to the street. In Bangladesh, you've seen it. In Kenya, you've seen it. Even in the UK lately, in Bristol, in Liverpool, you've seen all these things happening, and nobody really likes that, and nobody wants that at any level. It's something we all condemn. But when it is peaceful, when there is room for dialogue, I believe citizens should be able to take that opportunity, and then government as well should be able to take that opportunity to address the nation and to address the problems that the citizens are agitating for, or they are asking for the solution. I mean, they are not. This is not something that we do not know. And most of Nigerians, most of the citizens in this country, we all agree there is hunger in the land. The president agrees on that. He mentioned it a couple of times, and he said he understands it right from day one. But how do we solve the problem? We know the problem of security. We know the problem of agriculture. We know all this problem. How do we solve the problem? Yes, that is the big question. How and when do we have to solve this problem? And it's a continuous thing. And it's a continuous thing that we have to begin to. There's no one-day solution to all these things. It has to be a continuous. I mean, different ideas that will be tested. Some will work well, some will not work well.
There is a question of how to solve the problem. There's also the question of how, the people, the limitations that the people have to express their grievances. So if you listen to Mr. President's speech, he talked about having the constitutional responsibility to ensure public order, protect lives and property. But how does he balance that with the constitutional rights of people to protest, especially when you hear government say things like there's a clear political agenda to tear the nation apart through these protests? Don't you think that line is getting blurrier by the day? Because after all, in a democracy, the people should still have the right to protest, right?
Yes, see, this is a very delicate issue, and the balance have to be weighed by the government, because they have intelligence information. They have intelligence that being given to the president every day, and the national security advisor, he should know better. And where they see this kind of situation, before it gets out of hand, they have to tap it right away and tap the head and make sure that it doesn't get to that level, a situation whereby other countries' flag will be flown in Nigeria. That is not something we should support. But all this idea of looking into the situation whereby it's another political party, it's an opposition party or whatever, we don't know. I wouldn't know who is behind what, and that is not something any ordinary citizen will want to dabble into. But if the government has the intelligence report and they know how to deal with it, yes, let them go ahead and deal with it. Whoever that is trying to do such things, he or she will know the consequences before dabbling into it, and we have to face the law.
Absolutely. Let's also bring in a former lawmaker, a former senator representing Kaduna Central, and human rights activist Shehu Sani, who's also joined us from our studios in Abuja. Mr. Sani, thank you for joining us. You tweeted earlier about, how protesters should respond, especially after Mr. President's speech. You mentioned that they should suspend the protest and raise a team to dialogue with government, both at the federal and state levels. How does this work as someone who has a rich history in this regard?
Thank you very much for having me. Well, first of all, we must recognize and appreciate that Nigerians have the right to express their opinion, and the rights to assembly, and the rights to rally. They have the right to protest. That one cannot be denied. But the protest that is allowed by the Constitution of our country and the laws of our land is peaceful protest. I come from Kaduna State. The protest that took place is not a peaceful protest. And protest has rules of engagement, and which in a democratic society, demands are set and then demands are negotiated. If you call for a protest, there should be warning protest. There should be also a space for dialogue. And what I tweeted was that after the first 3 days of the protest, there is need to suspend the protest and raise a team to negotiate with the government at the federal and state level, and then restate your demands, so that at the end of the day, there will be something that is achieved out of the protest. Lives were lost, properties were destroyed, many people were rendered homeless, people made sacrifices, But at the end, there should be something to which has been delivered and achieved out of this protest, and it's done with a strategy. If you keep on protesting from day one to the last day and nothing is achieved, it means the whole effort is wasted. I'm speaking from Kaduna State, and when a protest is called, we have our concern. We come from history and experiences of protests that degenerated into violence, and we have been proven right with what has happened. I cherished and uphold and praises those who, out of their conscience and conviction, roll out in the street to express their opinion. But those who looted shops, vandalized government offices, and then molest others, snatched phones, unleashed terror and violence in the name of peaceful protest, this is not allowed in our democratic system. And especially in Kaduna State today, you can see what has happened. Some persons were sharing both money and Russian flags, and it means that the protest is not simply about the cost of living. It's not about the hardship. It's not about the insecurity. There are people with ulterior or hidden agenda that are either part of the protest or infiltrated the protesters and led us to where we are today. So that is why protests need leadership, a leadership that will drive the protest and control the crowd. Yes.
I hear you clearly, Senator Sani, and I understand the, potential, or rather the prospect, the possibility of this protest being hijacked in some parts of the country. But what are the prospects of this dialogue that the federal government is talking about, especially when you look at it vis-a-vis the demands of these protesters? They are specifically asking that fuel prices should return to 100 naira per litre. And if you listen to Mr. President's speech on Sunday, he appears to have defended removing fuel subsidy and abolishing multiple foreign exchange systems as tough decisions he needed to have taken. He considers them a long-term solution to tackle Nigeria's ailing economy. That seems to be the very soul of his administration's strategy. How realistic do you think these demands are on the side of the protesters, and what's the prospect of the dialogue that government is calling for?
You see, every protest should at least end in a negotiating table, except if it has ulterior motives of overthrowing a government. Then you don't need to negotiate with anyone. You simply want to evict the government out of office. But if you look at Nigeria's history, ASU do protests, the NLC do protests, National Assembly of Nigerian Students do protests, and each time they initiate these protests, there will naturally be an opposing statement from the government that we cannot meet up your demand and we don't have the resources to do what you want us to do. And then what they do is suspend and then give room for dialogue. If you have 10 demands and the government are able to meet up 3 or 4 of it, and then you give notice that if the rest of the demands are not met, we will resume our protests either in October or November. And then you give room for the government and consultations going on, and then it's achieved. But if you actually came out to the streets simply because you want to remove government and restore military rule, you will not have dialogue as a means of ending or achieving your aim. So that is my own view. Labour do make such kind of statement and go on protest, but they negotiate. The same thing with NLC, and the same thing with ASU and other rights groups. And this is how I feel the process. Let me bring back Mr. Daguro into this conversation. Mr. President's speech on Sunday also highlighted what he considers the gains and the things he's been able to achieve in about 14 months thereabout. One of which is doubling, according to him, doubling the aggregate government revenue. I think he mentioned hitting over 9.1 trillion naira in the first half of 2024. Do you think these protesters are also making demands from the respective governors who are now getting more from the Federation account?
You have to understand that some of the protesters, they don't understand the the rudiments or the fundamentals of our economy. And then this is one of the reasons why we have to begin to do more advocacy and to reach out to the people at the grassroots and to communicate to them the reasons why we are doing this. I mean, that's why you have agencies like the National Orientation Agency and some other agencies, and that's why you have the opportunity to reach out to the people and to make them understand. Most people, you know, they have this illusionary idea that, look, you have to go back to, you know, if it's possible, 100 naira per litre. It can't work. And these are the things that the government has taken the bull by the horn. They've done it, but then they want to know if NMPCL is coming up and say, listen, this is why, this is how much this is costing us, this is what we are doing, and this is what we've been able to. It is not just the president alone that should be doing this. Other agencies have to come up with these programs whereby they will be reaching out to the people, maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, and so that people will be informed. And then when people are well informed to the grassroots level at the same time, then it's a lot more easier. And not everybody will sit down and watching the TV. Not everybody will have the opportunity of listening to the radio, but then go to the grassroots, have this dialogue with them directly, and let the people just understand what we are going through. I think we need to work on that. Another thing, like you just said, is this. You know, it is clear that we are moving out of bankruptcy into a situation whereby we are having yields. And these yields, they want to know, people, citizens want to know, how are we making this yield? What are we making and what are we using it for? If we see all these things like the president has said he has done, and we can see it, we feel it, but then not everybody understands it. Not everybody feels it. That is the issue. So we need to do more. The state government have to do more. The state government have to communicate it more to the people. And that is why this issue of the local government autonomy is a good thing. Let's begin to ask the local government chairman and women what they collect, what they spend it on. Let us know the budget of the local government. This is where, you know, most of these are leaders from the grassroots, from the level, ward level. They have to begin to be opening up, to be transparent with some of these things, so that it will not be that the whole country will be looking up to Abuja and the president alone. We have people who are representing us. We have senators, we have reps, we have chairmen, we have councillors. What are these people? It's not when there's an issue. We have to see all of them on TV. Yes. You know, let this thing be a continuous thing so that people will be informed. I think we need a better information system.
We have to wrap up this conversation. Senator Sani, if I can get your closing remarks very quickly. I'm sure you're following what appears a recalcitrant reaction to Mr. President's speech on Sunday, largely from the camp of those who are on the streets. How do you think government should move on, you know, following this reaction, the insistence to get back on the streets to protest, learning from occurrences in Kenya, for instance, and what's going on currently in the UK?
Well, my position remains very clear that both the government and the protesters should make room for dialogue and negotiations on the demands. I am very much concerned in the sense that if this demand is about subsidy, is about hunger, is about hardship and the cost of living, then it should be restricted to that. We can't have a peaceful protest where people are looting shops, vandalizing government offices, and raising Russian flags. It means that it's not simply about the cost of living. There are ulterior motives behind this, and this has to be checked. The protesters are either infiltrated or they are either sponsored, as far as the case of our own state is concerned, which there is a need for an immediate action. Those who call the protests must show leadership and come out forward and control the monster they created for the peace and stability of this country.
Shehu Sani, former senator representing Kaduna Central and human rights activist, thank you so much for joining us on the conversation this evening. Joe Femi Dagoro is former president, Nigerian German Business Group in Germany. Gentlemen, thank you for your contribution on the program. And that's our show today, everyone. Thanks for being a part of it. You can watch it again at midnight and also at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.